are you serious is a great question for all of you to ask when you're going through the prospecting process. You ask them, when it comes to making more money, are you serious? And on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you as far as how serious are you? And if they give you a 10, then they've given you permission to push back a little bit every time that they come up with some objection that isn't really real. What were the 3 things? Point,
guide, direct.
Point, guide, and direct. So talk about point, guide, and direct.
Point, guide, direct is all about freedom. It's, working smarter, not harder. Today's lifestyle is so busy, so fast-paced. Probably moms and dads are, both working with the kids. It's just people don't have time. And so point, guide, direct is a concept about just pointing, guiding, and directing people through this process, and they will actually acquire their own strength and duplicate faster. For example, on a simple website, we've got all the tools, all the videos, the weekly schedule of events like conference calls, webinars, and you always get the same 5 or 6 questions. I mean, it doesn't matter what city, state, country, or language. It's the same basic questions. What about this? What about that? A guy will call up and say, hey, what time's the conference call, or what's the number? And I'll say, it's on the site. Click on next steps. They go, well, can't you tell me? I go, sure, I can tell you. But do you want me to give you 1 fish and you starve tomorrow, or would you rather me teach you how to fish so you can feed your family for the rest of your life? And they go, oh, okay, I get it. And I'll ask people, have you ever built large organizations? I've been fortunate. I've had a 1 million person downline 2 different times. And people would ask, what's the secret? How do you do that? And I say, well, it's not my Minnesota monotone speaking ability, but it's being duplicatable. And so point, guide, direct, it teaches people how to duplicate quickly, because you're just like a traffic cop. You're pointing, guiding, and directing people through this process. So when you're filling your pipeline up, when you're following up, all I'm asking is, what part of the process are you at? Did you hear the recording? No. Then dial this number or go to this website. Have you seen the video? Go watch that, and then I'll call you in 7 minutes. And so you keep pointing, guiding, and directing, and then they do that with their people, and then they acquire this strength because you don't want to be a slave to this business. That's how we kind of came across as people want a life, they want a lifestyle. And if you're always trying to answer those same questions one at a time, it wears you out.
Yeah. So point, guide, direct, and here's, don't get hung up on what he talked about, some of his process. Whatever the process is inside your company, the system that you have inside the company, point, guide, direct people into that system. There should be a recruiting funnel process of, an introductory tool, doing a presentation and a follow-up, and all the different places to be able to get the information. I'm sure you have a company website that has the information that you can guide people to and direct people to the next step and giving people assignments. One of the things, Jim, that you've been, that my old mentor pounded into me, and I know exactly where he got it, is stories are everything. Information doesn't really matter. Facts don't really matter. What matters is stories. What matters is not only stories about your products, stories about income, stories about different people's occupations, stories about how other people had adversity and they were afraid to make their list, but then they overcame that fear and they made their list, and then they went on to success. Your story, how important are stories? Because I think in network marketing, some people have lost that, and they just get into regurgitating facts to prospects too much, and they don't tell stories enough. Where do stories fit, and how much should people be engaging in that process?
I think they kind of get lost now. The tools are so great, and they really are, but it's the people that got to sell the tools. But you answer everything with a story, and to me, the testimonies and the stories is probably 90% of the whole presentation, because that's what people relate to. And so what you're always writing down is a story that's similar to you. So if it's an elderly woman, we've got a 79-year-old lady. If it's a teenager, a bodybuilder, similar testimonies that and the stories come across where if he can do it or she can do it, I can do it too. So it's got to be, you know, and believable stories. Give you another example. You know, I'm sure a lot of you heard, you know, the distributor who calls you and says, you know, I can't get anybody to buy, I can't get anybody to join, and I'm talking to everybody and nobody will do it. Well, I already know what the problem is, but I always ask the question back, you know, what are you talking about? Are you telling these stories? And 100% of the time, they're not telling testimonials.
Yeah.
They're just talking, on and on and on.
Giving their opinions.
And not sharing the stories. And so as soon as I say, have you been telling the stories to these people? And or are you just talking and talking? And that's the number one problem. When you have that person who says they've been talking to everybody but nobody will buy, well, it's an impossibility if you're sharing these testimonies.
If you're doing a home meeting, the most important thing you can do is tell stories. If you're doing a product demonstration or having somebody sample the product, the most important thing you can do is tell stories. If you're doing a live presentation in a hotel or a live event, the most important element of that is the stories. They won't remember your comp plan, they won't remember the ingredients, they won't remember, you know, how cool your company is or how many awards they've won. What they'll remember is the stories. So make sure that you focus on that.
In the stories, Eric, I mean, today in the 21st century, everything's a soundbite. You know, think about when you see a 30-second commercial, and if you don't like the commercial, what do?
Yeah.
You're clicking, you're changing the channel, right? Well, if you talk on and on and on and on, people tune out. I mean, Twitter taught us it's 140 characters, period, to get your whole thing down. You know, that's how fast attention spans are today. So you do that testimony in 30 seconds, and if you can do 3 or 4 in a row, then they start getting it. But yeah, if you go on and on and on and on, people have tuned out. You can't.
Think about a 2 or 3 minute commercial on television. Let's say it's a 3-minute commercial on television. How upset are you going to get in the middle of whatever show you're watching if you get a 3-minute commercial about some product or service? You're going to be going, what is going on here?
You wouldn't even probably come back to the show. You'd
like,
already be gone.
Get me out of here. Kill me. Somebody shoot me. I mean, this is too much. Mm-hmm. And yet people get up and they tell 5-minute stories and 10-minute stories, and aren't really stories. What they are is just, and here's why you should join, and here's why you should join. These repeating the seminar type testimonials versus just tell your story. It's not about you. It's not about recognition. It's about getting the point across and appealing to as many people as possible. What he said about targeting inside your company, there's a story for every circumstance that you would come across. If you come across a college student, I promise you there's a college student story in your company that you can tell that college student, even if you're not one. And there's a doctor story, and there's a nurse story, and there's a lawyer story, and there's a small business owner story, and there's somebody who's over 80 story, and there's the homemaker story, and the blue collar story, and all of it. You name it.
Master your stories.
Master the stories. It's vitally important.